to The Break Room, the podcast where the best work convos happen. We're joined today by your hosts, including workplace psychologist Maria,
Hi.
your favorite Gen Z colleague Jhea,
Hello.
podcast producer Isle, that's myself. Today's episode, we'll be talking about career catfishing. Now, this isn't about fake resumes or misleading job ads. Career catfishing is when someone accepts a role, signs the contract, and then never shows up on their first day. This trend started emerging in the mid 2020s, like during the pandemic, and it's becoming a big talking point for both employers and employees. So, in this episode, we're diving into why people are ghosting jobs before they even begin, and what it says about workplace culture and expectations, and maybe how different generations view commitment to work. We'll also unpack the psychology behind career catfishing and share some of our takes from both the Gen Z and expert lenses, and give our practical advice as well. So, let's dive into it. So now that we know the meaning behind career catfishing after doing some research and just now as we discussed it, let's kick things off with a roundtable question. So to everybody in this podcast, the roundtable question is: if you already accepted a job and decided last minute that you didn't want it, would you ghost or would you still show up to resign properly? Jaya, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I think ghosting or like not showing up on the first day doesn't sit right with me. So I would just rather show up to resign properly because it goes against my values to back out the last minute without saying anything. So I think if I already said yes to the role, I would show up and give it a proper try. And I think the only time I think it's okay not to show up on your first day is if there's a real emergency or threat or something unexpected happens like an accident. But even then, I still make sure to let them know what's going on, like whenever I get the chance to do so. Otherwise, I would stick with it and evaluate during the probationary period whether the job's really for me or not. That way, I am still being respectful and professional, both to the company and to myself. How about you, Al?
Yeah, I agree. I guess in this situation it would depend, but I I would show up to resign properly. We discussed ghosting, like office ghosting in one of our previous episodes, and I feel like it's the same thing. It's more or less the same concept. It's never a nice feeling to have someone not talk to you, to be ghosted, to ghost someone and just kind of be left out of the loop. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what the updates are. And I think, regardless as well of maybe some of the personal problems you're going through, or like you mentioned, if there's an emergency, I think it's a decent thing to update your employer or update your new workplace, update what's going on so that they're not left out of what's happening, what's going on. And so, yeah, for me, I would show up to resign properly. I think it's just a decent thing to do. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have never ghosted anyone before, but I had a company, and this happened in my very first job offer where I believe once I said, yes, I am okay with the job, they sort of came back and said they want to reduce my pay. And that hurts quite a lot, right? Because you have gone through the process of interview and then you said yes already and everything, and then they threw this back at me. I know it's not the same as career catfishing, but that left a very bad taste for me. And since then, in my interview with any of the companies, I do ask more questions to ensure that, ask about the pay and everything so it doesn't happen again. And on the flip side, being the employer as well, right? I know that it is really important how the importance of the interview process and to provide all the information so that career catfishing doesn't increase. The chance of career catfishing doesn't increase for me also.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, Maria, with that, let's kind of zoom out from a psychological perspective. Since you experienced it yourself, I want to unpack a few questions with you. And so, what do you think is going on psychologically when someone bails before their first day, or when someone bails on their first day of work after going through the screening, interview, maybe there was even a contract
Mhm.
signed, everything? What do you think is psychologically when someone bails out of that?
So honestly, Al, just like any of the Gen Z term, I had to do a lot more research on this to really understand the term. And then I try to see from the point of view, from the psychological point of view, right? Like, what is it that will cause someone to create catfish, to ghost, or to just disappear, right? And I think in my research, a lot of people do mention about having a better offer, maybe a better offer that comes up. Maybe they change their mind at the end of the day that, hey, they said yes, but then they changed their mind. Perhaps it's about the fear of having an awkward conversation with someone, or it's just like it could be just a frustration over the hiring process and everything like that, right? But if we look deeper in to see what are the psychological drivers, what is it that's going on inside the person? It could be due to many other things. One, it could be a fear of conflict. I believe we covered this in our previous episode, how sometimes it's kind of hard, right, to share or to articulate what is going on inside of us to, in this case, strangers. And therefore, this fear of conflict and perhaps the poor communication skill of the person, perhaps they say, like, I don't really know how to say no. Like, I signed already, and then what do I do now? Like, so the best thing is to disappear, because that is the same mechanic, coping mechanic as ghosting that you just avoid. And it works for them, right? They don't need to deal with something that is frustrating them or like giving them the anxiety. Or it could be due to a cognitive dissonance. And what this means is that you just don't feel right. There's like what you want to do and what you choose to do and your belief are not aligned, causing a discomfort for you, right? And so sometimes you say yes, but it is to a job that you may not like, or it does not align well with your value. And this can cause a lot of the discomfort and all that. And if this is the case, maybe the best way, once again, is choosing to disappear so that they can reduce the discomfort, the dissonance that they're feeling. And if people are lucky, right? So Gen Zs, if you're lucky to have a lot of job offers, because I believe that's what a lot of people do as well, you'll send out many different job, right, applications, and perhaps you end up with just more than one offer. And while it is a good thing, I believe Al and Jhea, it's a good thing, right? If you have more than one offer, you'll be like, yes, I got like so many things to choose from. But it could create what we call like an option overload, where you have so many to choose from. Then how do I handle this? Which is the best one for me? And that can cause decision paralysis. And what this means is you're basically, you don't know what to choose and you're stuck. And then how do you deal with being stuck? Well, that leads to inaction and not being able to choose. And that can lead to silence and withdrawing and not going to the company that you have said yes in the first place. And that could be another one as well, right? The psychological thing. And I think I read a research about the number of Gen Z who create catfish, and it is significantly higher than all the other gens, right? And doesn't mean that we're bad or anything. Not we, right? I'm not a Gen Z. I forgot. But is it bad or anything? Then no, because if you're looking at the age and the life stage of Gen Z, they're young adult, right? And perhaps people are still exploring, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I do not want to do? And these are really big questions as part of their identity exploration. And if that is the case, if one job offer comes in, it could feel exciting at first. Yes, someone wants me in the team. And then after a while, they might feel it may not be authentic. It may not sit well with them. There could be a lot more questions that they have about the job. And this can cause them to feel more anxiety. And that could lead to silence and withdrawing from the company, right? So all of these could be some of the psychological factors. And we need to also keep in mind that the career catfishing doesn't happen from the employee side. Sometimes companies do that as well, right? They post all these things and then, oh, there's actually no job. And then people end up spending time to apply for these jobs, but then they don't get any response at all. And these are learned behaviors for people who are applying, right? If the company can do this, then I should be able to do the same thing as well. And this is according to the social exchange theory, where they would, if there's like a perceived unfairness or unbalance in the relationship, they may just stop investing or respecting the others. And I know that perhaps the company that they signed for may not be the same company that ghosted them in the past, but it's likely that people would just, group all of them together, employees. And so all of these could contribute to why people career catfish.
Oh, that's so interesting because there's actually a lot of reasons as to why it happens. Because just to add, I was working in a recruitment team before, and then the most generic email we would receive when someone backs out is that they receive a better offer. And I think that's the one thing that is easier for them to communicate, it seems, because those are the emails we always get. And then they're backing out like one day before the start date or on the day. But for the other reasons that you've mentioned, I didn't really hear those things. So I wonder if those are the kind of reasons that are too personal for them to share. And so when they get a better offer, it's just easier to share it with the recruiter. So with that, I wonder, in your view, Maria, how does career catfishing affect trust and culture in a team?
Thanks, Jhea. Before I answer that, I just want to add on based on what you said about the reason. Sometimes the things I said, right? These are the psychological drivers. So therefore, it is something that is implicit. Sometimes it's really hard to articulate, right? For example, if you have so many different choices, there's no good explanation for why you don't want the job anymore. So sometimes it just boils down to just tell them, oh, I have a better offer. I have something that comes up, right? If they do that, if they do choose to explain, right? But sometimes it becomes too overwhelming that silence or inaction becomes easier for them. Now, coming to the questions regarding trust, right? Well, one thing for sure for employers, it's going to cost them a lot, because if every time they go through the hiring cycle, then they need to interview many people. The amount of time, the resources that they have to spend searching for someone, and the time that they spend interviewing someone. And these days, that the interview cycle or the process itself can be very long, right? So that's for sure going to cost money and resources for HR. But for the team itself, and I want you to just imagine along, right, that you have a team and someone left, and the amount of work that is piling up, because a person leaves the team, then someone else needs to be in charge of all these the new load. And if HR, your leader, says, hey, we have a new team member coming in, and the team members would likely to be, yes, finally, I have a new team member. Someone would just take over this load that I'm holding on to. And one day before, or on the day itself, someone's supposed to show up and take over, the person disappeared. And that's not going to be a very nice feeling to have, because then you need to wait for at least perhaps a month before someone comes in. So that would erode the trust, right, in the team. And it's going to affect how they're going to be working, whether it's feeling of like burnout for some people, or even the energy, or even the planning, right? There might be a project that's coming in that requires an additional team member, and this can disrupt the entire momentum of the team. And not only that, because of this happening, then, and especially if it is due to Gen Z, and if it happens more than once for the team, then I think there's going to be a lack of trust or questioning for any Gen Z team members that come in. Because the question on everyone's mind is, hey, is this person going to ghost us in the next few days or not? Should I even spend so much time with this person? Because there's a high chance of ghosting, and then they might be hesitant to welcome the new team member. The onboarding might be a bit, it might lose momentum. The leaders might feel that they shouldn't invest their time and resources on the new person because the person might leave or ghost them anytime. So these could be some of the things that can cause the lack of trust and all this if career catfishing do happen more often. Jay, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for like providing more clarification because on my end also I've heard a story about another Gen Z who actually ghosted on the first day of work. And then on the next day, that person showed up, but then went home early due to a family emergency. And so it's really a bad impression. And from what I've heard, the manager and the fellow colleague were like fighting like for the whole week because they're both the decision maker. And because of what the new hire did, it kind of like ruins the department, the synergy and the plans that they were gonna do. And so instead of thinking that oh, we have a new hire to do the job. Instead, they got more work to do. And so, yeah, it's kind of complicated. And I'm not sure as well if it's been a common new thing to do now or not. But so far, it's the first time I've heard of that story.
Thank you. Yeah, it can be very difficult, right? Like for HR, for leaders, and also for the team members in dealing with this. So, let's hope. Let's hope that it doesn't happen so often. Over to you, Al.
Yeah, thanks for all your insights, Maria, as well as Jay, with the personal experience or observation with others. I think career catfishing, I think this has been around for a while. It just has a new name to it. Um, and so I wanna give it back to our generation, Jay, and kind of like unpack it from our end. And I'm curious to know, if you had a friend who bragged about career catfishing, what would you do? Like, what would you do about the situation, and how would you approach your friend about it?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, if that person is my friend, then I think that friend would be like good enough and mature enough to understand as well my feedback or opinion on the matter, and that that person would also trust me to share his or her decisions in life. And so for me, if my friends share that, I would probably ask them why they did it. I want to understand what made them feel like ghosting on the first day or career catfishing was the only option. But at the same time, I would also be honest and tell them that it's not a professional way to handle things because my friend might keep doing it and it will leave a bad record and he or she might end up developing that habit of doing so and will end up losing a lot of opportunities. I think I wouldn't judge them right away, but I also wouldn't want to just laugh it off. It's totally valid to change your mind about a job, but disappearing without saying anything affects other people too. And I just want that person to see the bigger picture and think about the overall impact. And so for me, I would be honest about it. And for me, imagine the recruiter was expecting the new hire to come in, prepared all the training materials only for no one to show up. So I think the recruiter invested so much time and effort in the hiring process and believe in my friend's potential only to end up disappointed. So I think people forget that there are real humans on the other side of the decision. And I want my friend to realize that. How about you, Anne?
Yeah, more or less, we have the same kind of mindset about that. For me, I think it would depend, right, on when my friend shares about their experience about them career catfishing. I think it would depend because there could be so many factors that come into place, like maybe the company was the one showing red flags and then they decided to not show up, or even my friend could be the red flag and that they just kind of miss the opportunity altogether. Regardless, I think it's good to listen, especially since they were comfortable enough to let me know or share their experience. And so I think it would be good to listen and maybe give subtle advice depending on how close I am with that friend. However, in this situation, in this scenario, if my friend was in the wrong, I would let them know. Just because if they did it now, if they did it so easily, they might do it again in the future, especially since they have already kind of like practiced it, they experienced it one time. I think that it would be easier for them to do it again in the future, especially since I've seen a growing trend. Well, it's not really a trend, but I've just kind of had an observation that, ever since the pandemic, with a lot of companies going online or going hybrid, I also know some people who did those things, who kind of ghosted a job interview or even like the first day of work because this and that happened. And so I'm not particularly saying that it's growing with the online world, but I think you kind of I'm not sure about the statistics, so I'm just seeing it from observation that it might also be a factor. But yeah, regardless, um if and in that case, if my friend was in the wrong, I would let them know. It could also just be bad practice, right, for them to keep carrying that habit in the working world, regardless if you're working online or working in person. Just kind of not showing up at work and not committing to the responsibilities that you signed up for. If they do it at work, I think it's just a bad habit to carry around with you. And so, sorry, if they're my friend, I would let them know. Yeah, so I think more or less we kind of have the same answer there. But
I'll
mhm.
sorry, I have a question though, because like why and this is me, I really don't understand this and I really want to hear from you, right? And why would anyone brag about it though? Like what is it that is there to brag about career catfishing?
I think just from my observation, right? Because I actually had one person that I know who did kind of low key brag about it. Because I think for them, it makes them feel like, oh, all these companies or all these employers are chasing after me, even though I'm ghosting them. So there's kind of that arrogance or that feeling of power of like, oh, like everybody's chasing me. I'm a catch. And so like just kind of like not showing up for work or not showing up for a job interview, that has a sense of like bragging, like they have a sense of pride bragging about it, just because it's like, oh, like this company's chasing me anyway. If I ghost them, I'll have a new one tomorrow or I'll have a new one next week. And so I think I'm guessing that that's where they come from that point of view. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thanks for explaining. So it's really, it comes down to like the choice and the choices that people have. And then it could be like, hey, I have another one. And if I don't like this one, then I can also continue with the next one because I know people want me. Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, so I guess it just kind of comes down to the values that you hold in the working world and like being a professional. So yeah, I'm not generalizing Gen Z, but if you're like someone younger who just entered the working world, you may not have these specific set of like values yet. You kind of build them as you go along. So I think that's where it comes from. Another question I have as well with like from the Gen Z perspective, Jaya, what are your thoughts on, do you think this is a growing trend about protecting your mental health or avoiding tough situations or tough conversations in terms of career catfishing?
Mm, For me, I don't think it's just one or the other because as what Maria mentioned earlier, there's a lot of reason and drivers as to why people are doing it. For me, it's just easy to say that people are either protecting their mental health or avoiding uncomfortable conversations, but I feel like it's more complicated than that. Although what I've seen on social media is that people are always posting that, oh, protect your mental health, protecting my mental health now. I need my mental health break. And that's what, like, I think it becomes a trend because people are posting about it. And for me, whatever is trending doesn't really like represent everything because there are certain demographics who are on social media. So those people who are on social media are representing the trend, but those people who are not exposed to social media, they might not be well represented. And so other factors or reasons are not being talked about. I guess, sure, for some people, it might be about anxiety, burnout, or not having the energy to take on a new role. And for others, maybe it really is about not wanting to have that awkward, hey, I changed my mind conversation. But honestly, I also think some people just think about the impact. Like they just don't care at all. They might not care enough to consider how their decision affect others, or they've never been on the other side of the hiring process. And so they don't realize how much time and effort goes into onboarding someone. So no, I don't think it's about protecting mental health or avoiding conflict. It could be either of those things, but sometimes it's just about a lack of accountability or self awareness from that person. Yeah. How about you, Anne?
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear your perspective, especially from someone in the background of working HR and actually going through the whole onboarding process with someone. And so you kind of know the back end or like the back ropes of that. So that's really interesting. For me, I'm 50-50 on this about if whether it's a trend about protecting mental health or avoiding tough conversations. I think Gen Z or younger generation, I think we have a more forward attitude when asking for what they believe is fair, especially as you mentioned, there's a lot of trends and videos online, people promoting this. And so however, I also acknowledge that sometimes younger generations can have a lack of accountability as well. I've seen a lot of reels about younger people or even like people older than us. I think because there are like trends that are promoting this, whoever jumps into that bandwagon also kind of picks up that habit as well. But I've seen a lot of videos about like younger people refusing to work, refusing to socialize, refusing to help their family, all because they're going through something personal. And in this scenario with career catfishing, I specifically saw a TikTok video about someone who did this. Like they had such a hard time looking for a job after college. Like they graduated college and then they had a hard time looking for a job and they needed to help contribute to their family. And so I think one day they finally got a job. They were so happy about it. But on the first day, like they woke up, they got dressed, they rode the bus to work, and then all of a sudden they got a feeling that they didn't want to do it anymore. So they didn't go to work. They went back home, never went to their job, and never replied and just ghosted. And I saw a video of that on TikTok and it had like a million likes or something. And the comments were like, protect your mental health and blah, 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 blah. And so I think with that particular video, I didn't particularly agree with it just because there was this sudden rushed feeling of not wanting to do it. And so they just kind of stopped. They didn't go to work. They didn't fulfill the responsibility of actually going like what they had signed up to do with other responsibilities. And so you see a video like that and all of the support that they get from people online who are actually promoting that as well and also like supporting them that yes, at the end of the day, protect your mental health. But in this scenario, it didn't feel like protecting their mental health. It just seemed like they kind of backed off of their responsibility super last minute. And it wasn't based on something like there was an emergency or there was something important that they needed to do. It was just a feeling that
Hmm.
um they felt. And so I think with career catfishing, you could have all sorts of reasons like protecting your mental health to not show up at work or fulfill your responsibilities, or you could even also be like a personal problem, stuff like that. But I think there's also an accountability factor into it. Um, Similar to what Jaya mentioned, like what you mentioned about the lack of accountability. I think that's something that I also see happening often is people using protecting their mental health as an scapegoat to not be accountable for their actions. And so I think yeah, they might be using it as an scapegoat or as an excuse to face difficult situations rather than overcome them. And so I think with this question, yeah, that's why I'm 50-50 about it because it could be a valid reason. Yeah, sorry. But that's basically my whole point. Like it could be a valid reason, but it could also be like an accountability factor. So that's why I'm 50-50. It could work either way, but
Hmm.
I think it depends on the situation. So yeah,
If
Maria.
I can, if I can add in a bit, right? Because your story that seems very real, and I feel for the person. Someone is so looking forward to the job, going to work, and everything. So I can imagine that they have quite a huge expectation, right, about for themselves, for the work environment and everything, and it can be quite overwhelming to enter a new environment with so much expectation. And sometimes that can result in avoiding rather than facing, right? Like, what if, imagine, right? Like, you're going into a new environment, a new workplace, you want to be your best self, you want to make sure that everything's fine, and along the way your thoughts go negative. What if I don't live up to the expectation? What if I made a mistake? What if my colleague doesn't like me? Right? It could be 101 reasons that stops them from processing with that journey to work. And the best thing to deal with that anxiety, I don't know whether it's even anxiety, but it's just a lot of the negative thoughts and negative feelings that they have. The best thing to do, and if you're not be careful, is to just avoid. And yes, it is considered as protecting your mental health, but is it the best way? I think that's the key, right? Yes, you're feeling negative, you're not feeling so good, you're feeling overwhelmed, but is that the best way forward? Avoiding can help you. It reduces that feeling of overwhelmed, feeling of anxiety, but I believe that there are better ways, right? How do you ensure that you take care of your mental health? What do you do when you're feeling anxious? Can the deep breathing, countering some of those negative thoughts be helpful? And to say that, hey, if I might not be perfect, why don't I just go in, try it out first and see what is it like? Because what you think and what will happen on that day can be very different.
Yeah, I also have another question since we're talking about first day at work. So I am really curious with your first jobs, like how do you recall how you felt like on your first day joining the company? Because for me, I guess I would share first before I you take over. For me, when I had my first job, it was during pandemic and it's just work from home. So I guess it's not too scary because you're just online in your computer. So you don't have nerves going in person to meet new people. And I recall it that I was so excited and I was like really determined to like kickstart my corporate journey and that I was really looking forward to what I will be learning because that time it also happens that due to the pandemic we don't have our in person on the job training. And so I felt like I lost on it that I missed that opportunity to actually train on the ground. And so when I had that work from home opportunity, I recall being so excited about it. And same goes when I actually had an on-site job. I was like days prior, I was trying to prepare what clothes to wear, what shoes to wear, how I would do my makeup, what accessories I would wear because like first impression really lasts. That's what my teacher told me. And so I was like, oh my God, I was like so prepared. But at the same time, I was nervous and excited at the same time. And that very same day, I took my ID picture. And when I went inside the office, I was the only one who was wearing heels and blazers. And then everyone was just wearing t-shirt and jeans. And I was like, oh my God, did I just overdress on my first day? And then ever since then, it became a talk with my colleagues that, oh, we have this new hire, and she's this girly pop who's dressing up every time. And then I was, I stayed consistent for the whole month until after a year, I was like just in a polo and jeans because sometimes it's needed with the job as well to just dress plainly. But yeah, I think for me I had a positive feelings towards it in my first day. And so it made me wonder what happened to this generation now because based on what I hear, it's the new gen or the Gen Z that are doing it. So maybe did we lose our spark or did we just change our perception about getting a new job? So yeah, that's it. I'm just wondering. How about you, Maria? How was your first day?
When you ask the question, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's been so long. I don't remember. So I'm going to say the old stuff like in my time. Okay, but for real, I don't quite remember. But okay, so I'll give you two examples, right? One was with a company where people were more of my age. And because I knew them, like I had a good interview, I knew a friend inside already. So I think it was more of an excitement of like going in. And of course, I'll be thinking about like, oh, what to wear and all these things. I want to make sure that I have a good, like make a good first good impression. That went well. But the other company that I worked with most of the people, well, actually, all of them were older than me. And there's a huge age gap. So I was the youngest one. And so that was a little bit more nerve wracking because I feel that it was rather cold when I first went in, right? And this, I can see it from the interview already, but because it was something that I wanted to do, then that's why I chose to sign on with the company. But even then, right, like leading to the first day of work, I think it was not just excitement. I think it was also fear and all that. And I don't know whether this was the job that gave me a bit of like a bad dream. You know how when you're younger and then like your first day of like school is coming and then sometimes you have like weird dreams about school, sometimes like appearing like naked in school, like or like not wearing the uniform for the school, you're wearing your home clothes or something like that. So I think I had something like that before this particular job, and I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to survive or not? So it took me a longer time to adjust and to warm up with everyone in the company. But that's my time. What about you, Al?
I've always had an online job since the beginning, but I remember on my first day of work, like Jaya, I was super excited. So I can't remember, but I think the meeting was supposed to be set at around like 10 a.m. or something. I don't normally wake up so early, but like that day I woke up at 6. I had my breakfast, I took a shower, I put on a little bit of makeup. I even chose like what top to wear, especially so I could look presentable on Zoom. But I always had like the first day excitement. And yeah, I think that's like with what Jaya mentioned, we have both had a pretty similar like first day of being super excited to start. I think especially because it was my first job. Like I haven't had any other job before this. So just having that excitement, right, of always being a student, now I'm a worker and it's my first time in the working world. And so the first day was always kind of exciting for me. But yeah, going back to all of that, I think what we are curious about is this just another question just kind of thrown in there, but having our different perspectives, right, on the first days and some of the growing trends we've been noticing recently. This might not be a psychological perspective, but maybe more of like a professional perspective. What do you think changed between like the now that with like the different generations, how they approach the first day of work? Do you think that with younger generations we have a more lenient per- lenient attitude with not showing up compared to before? Or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
If
Maybe
I can start,
I
sorry, I'll go first. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I think I would go first before I get my biased opinion from yours. But I think personally, based on what I can, like, I think for me, like, the really visible reason about it is because of the social media consumption. Because many people are not filtering what they see in social media. And so, for example, if you're on TikTok and then you see this video about, I'm bragging about not showing up on my first day of work, and then it becomes a controversial topic, and then many people would seem to agree about it. And so it will just spread and it will keep showing up on your feed as well. And so it will actually like influence the way you think and see life. And I think that is true because I was on TikTok before and I see all this like opinion from people, and some of them doesn't really make sense. It's just too personal, unprofessional, not really nice behavior. But then many people can relate. And so it's being fostered even if it's not a good behavior. And so when I realized that, I stopped using TikTok for I guess 2 years now because I wanted to filter my social media consumption, because nowadays people are just so blunt on social media. We have this bragging behavior, and I guess it's just the social media consumption that influence our mindset now, because we don't get to talk with actual adults who have their personal opinions that would actually guide us and help us along the way. And so that's why I think where the gap is. But yeah, what about you, Maria? What do you
That's an insightful perspective, and I do see because social media it depends on what you choose and it caters to you, right? So whatever you see and continue to see, it would be evidence to what you believe in. right? So that's like the negative thing about the social media. And while I agree, there's some slight overlap to what I want to share with you, and this is regard how companies often say that human resources, right, like the people within the team are important, and that we need to take care of our people. However, we also see on social media how the hiring and firing becomes something that is so normalized that, hey, if this company is not doing well, the first thing they do is cut people, right? And that appears in the news, the social media, and all these. And if it is something that is normalized for employers to do, and this is something that they have to do, because if there's no money, if they're not doing well, they need to cut for something, right? But if it is something that people see that, hey, it is common, it is okay for them to cut, hire, and fire right away, not giving notice sometimes, then for employees, for Gen Zs, or even outside of Gen Z, right? Any generation, if you know that that's what company are going to be doing, shouldn't I also take on the same perspective and say, if I find something new, why don't I just take that new thing? I don't need to be loyal to the company that I am with because they would do the same thing to me. So that could be why we see more people not sticking to the job, or perhaps changing, or perhaps ghosting, because the emotional connection or even the social identity that is formed with the company is getting lesser. And I believe that that's something that companies need to look as well, right? Like, what do you do to ensure that you can build a better, a stronger identity for the company? And then you have to have a process that will make people want to be with you and to grow together as a company. Similar but different. Al, you started this question. Would you like to do your perspective on this?
Yeah. I think I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a biased kind of opinion going into it. Also, based on what Jaya said, right? Everything I saw on TikTok, social media. I think because we're part of the Gen Z generation, I'm also getting fed all of those TikToks and like all of those reels. And so it might not be the majority, but it's because it's something I see so often that it almost seems like everybody else is doing it. So that's why I kind of have like a biased opinion going into it. But yeah, just kind of hearing your professional thoughts on it. And I guess like at the end of the day, it really depends on the situation, on the capacity of the person and how the company treats their employees. And so there's not a one all be all solution, or there's not really a one all be all kind of coping mechanism or a to-do list to get into this to kind of navigate the situation. It really depends. And so I think that's something we'll be tackling later on what are some practical advice that we can um, relate to the audience, from like a Gen Z perspective and also from an expert perspective. But it's really interesting how we're kind of navigating the situation from all different kinds of perspectives, and it's been really insightful so far. So now I would actually want to diversify this conversation we have and actually go into a quick little game. So if anybody else has any more questions that they want to get answered, let me know. So Jaya, do you have any more questions that you want to ask?
No, I'm feeling a game now.
Maria, anything that you want to like cover?
It's time for your game.
Okay, so now we're going into the segment of a new game we have called Catfish or Justified. So in the past episodes, we have these couple of scenarios that we would rate if they are catfish or justified. So I have 10 scenarios here, and each of the team gets to decide that if ghosting before day one is a red flag or like a catfish, or if it's justified. So that's how we're going to go through each of these scenarios. So red flag is catfish, and then green flag is justified. So, okay, scenario number one: accepting a job, then discovering online that the company turnover is high. So is this a red flag or a cat? Yeah, sorry. Is this a catfish or justified? So I'm going with red flag.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Catfish.
Okay.
Yeah. Red flag.
Yeah. Okay. So, next, signing an offer, but another company calls you with double the pay. Red flag or justified? With this one, I'm going with justified. It Yeah, I think with this one, it might be abrupt. Like we mentioned this exact scenario earlier. It might be abrupt to leave the company, going through all this process and then like not actually going on the first day. But I think if you're signing on for the next year, it's gonna make sense for you to go for the higher pay. And so I would say justified. What are your thoughts? Yeah, Jaya.
Yeah, I think I mean it's a tough situation, but I think it's justified not I think it makes sense not to show up on the first day, but you would have to give them a notice that hey, I receive a better offer, I get the double pay or something, and so that they would know already what's up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a tough one because you know that you're in the wrong. You have signed already, right? And then you want to pull out and all that. So there's it can feel very, very bad to do it, but I think I would stick to giving them a call and say, sorry, I got a better offer.
Yeah. Okay. So next, finding out that the remote role you signed up for is actually 5 days in office. Red flag or justified? I would say, yeah, red flag. Because you signed up for a work from home role, but you're supposed to be in the office most of the week, so it doesn't align. How about you, Jayan?
I think it's, for example, they said that it's a work from home, and then if they just tell you on the spot or like the evening that oh you have to, it's actually 5 days on site, then I think I would be so confused and disappointed because they straight up lied on the job post about the position. And so if there is no trust and it was a lie to begin with, then I would be so discouraged to show up. So for me, I think it's justified if that's the case.
I wouldn't work with them, but I would still inform them that I'm not coming in.
That's interesting. Okay, next. HR promised growth opportunities, but you find out that the last three hires quit within a month. Red flag or justified?
Red flag.
Red.
Yeah. For me, I went with 50-50. I would flag this as concerning, but maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. So maybe experience it for yourself. But yeah, I don't know. I went 50-50 with this. Okay.
I'm with
Next.
you on that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, next. You simply changed your mind and don't feel excited anymore to show up on the first day. Red flag or justified? So I
Red
went with
flag.
Red.
okay. Next, onboarding emails from HR are a mess, and they already accidentally shared your personal info to the rest of the team. Red flag or justified? I'm going with
Red
the
flag.
Red.
yeah. Next, another company offers less money but way better work-life balance. Red flag or justified? For this I went with justified.
We're red. So
Red.
we give you the chance to explain yourself first and hear from Jhea.
Well, there's lots of reasons, right? To like what we discussed earlier. So many reasons for a person not to proceed on their first day of work or stuff like that. And so, if for some reason it seems like having better work-life balance is better for you, then maybe considering that other job feels justified because it fits the needs that you have right now. So yeah, that's just kind of my thinking process behind that. So I went to justified, but still also not promoting catfishing or ghosting, still letting the company know that you don't want to proceed, but more of just like the decision to change a company is justified because maybe the work-life balance is fits your needs better at this moment. So yeah, that's my thought process behind it. Okay, next.
Jhea? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, for me, it's just red flag because even if there's a better offer when it comes to work-life balance, then I should inform them first because what if they can still negotiate that work-life balance that you want? Then there's nothing wrong about asking as well or inquiring. Maybe the company can also negotiate. So at least you don't really lose everything. So I guess just be honest and tell your current employer since you already signed a contract with them. And also we have to remember some companies have like bonds or I don't know, like you have to pay something. So like it's very important to review all the details before going in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, not knowing or like um if you don't don't want to work for the company anymore, it's a red flag if you don't tell them. If you tell them and you leave and say like, hey, I got a better offer, I think that's still okay if you tell them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, okay, next. You discover that the company is in the news for shady business practices, red flag or justified. All right.
Justified.
What are your thoughts, Jaya?
For me, it's justified because I personally think that if they are doing shady, illegal stuff and being exposed in the news, then I wouldn't want to associate myself with that company. So I'm just assuming probably that company is under investigation and the hiring process is paused anyway, and they're in a mess right now because I am thinking this in the perspective, like one example, there it's like gone viral even outside the Philippines. I don't know if you heard about this, Al, but there's this BPO company in the Philippines, and they were like scamming, and they got caught scamming like real time in the CCTV because they got hacked or something, and so they were actually exposed. And so I saw that in the news, and I was like, what if I was gonna start my first day there? I wouldn't show up at all because that's just like so scary to be in there and you didn't know what you signed up for. So for me, I think it's justified to just not show up at all. And I would just think the recruitment process is on hold or they're shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because I actually know someone here personally as well. They got into they worked for a company for I think less than a month. And then in the middle of working during that month, the company actually that's the same thing happened is the company got investigated by the bureau or something, and so they stopped the company let them go like on the spot because they were being investigated. So but I think I don't know that person personally because they're like a friend of a friend of a friend. But you know how gossip kind of travels. I don't know them personally, but because I heard that story and I think they had an idea that the company was into shady business because for the position that they were in, allegedly the pay was really high. But I think that was to overcompensate that the company is actually not like registered or they were doing some shady business and stuff like that. And so yeah, that's just a little tangent that I also know some know of someone, I don't know them personally, but know of someone who went through that same thing. And so yeah, I think it's scary working for a company like that or not even knowing that you're in it already. And so it could affect like for example, it could revoke your license if you're a professional in a certain field that you were associated with that company, or it could even like what happened with that person is they lost their job like even in the middle of the month. I don't think the first month even fully transpired, but then they had to look for another job again. And so just kind of going into shady businesses like that, I feel like is a red flag because it affects a lot of things from you, like your pay that month, even your career might be in line, especially if you're practicing professional. It might affect your license. But yeah, okay, yeah, that was just a little side tangent. That was interesting to.
But the other like perspective for that, and then it's nothing to do with this thing, but I just gonna add is like some people just don't mind get rich quick, do it for just a few months, and that's probably equivalent to you working in a normal job for like 6 months or something. If you work for like 2 3 months, right? Why not just go in, stay for a while, leave.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's justified. It's just the scary part is just getting caught, I think. Okay, next. The benefits package promised in the interview doesn't appear in the contract. Red flag or justified? I think for this one I went 50-50. I think you could remind them before signing. Maybe they missed it out in the contract. So yeah, I would go with 50-50. How about you, Jaya?
Yeah, for me, I would say red flag in the premise that the contract was already signed because before you sign the contract, you would have to review it. But if you signed it without reviewing and then you don't show up on the first day, then you are the red flag.
So the tip out there from the old me is make sure that you review your contract before signing. Don't just, I know sometimes I don't know whether they still do this or not, like, go in and sign the paper contract and they feel pressured to sign right away. Don't feel pressured by it. Read everything. Make sure that everything that they promise is inside. And even better, if it is a digital contract, make sure you spend time reading it first so that if there's anything that's missing, you can negotiate. Because once you put in, then it becomes a responsibility, right? That you have committed to, you said yes to them already.
Right. Okay. This is the last question. Getting pressured to start earlier than agreed, and then they guilt trip you about it. Red flag or justified? For this, I went with the red flag.
Red flag.
Red flag.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So thanks, team, for the fun little game. I think they had very mixed opinions about each of the scenarios. And so it's just interesting to know everybody else's opinions on the same set of scenarios that we have. Okay. So our next segment is sharing practical tips about dealing with career catfishing. I think me and Jaya can go first, and then Maria can wrap things up with a practical advice from our expert psychologist. Okay, so I think I can go first. I think for me, my actionable takeaway or my practical tip is if you realize that a job isn't right for you before starting, like before day one, maybe try your best not to ghost or try your best not to career catfish. I think something as simple as sending a short, polite email, maybe even a text, like letting them know that you're backing out. It keeps the door open for you to possibly work together in the future, to avoid bad blood or to avoid any bad impressions on you. And it also protects your reputation as a working individual. And so I think it saves both sides the time to chase after each other or like the lack of information. So I think before starting on day one, or even if it's day one already, try your best not to ghost and let the company or let the other side know of your decision, your updates, what decision you came up with. Ghosting might feel easier in the moment, but the future you will thank you for leaving them on good terms. So that's my practical advice is try your best to not ghost and let the other person or let the other side know what's going on. So yeah, how about you, Jaya?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of similar with Al, but yeah, one would be honest and communicate. If you're having second thoughts about the job you already accepted, then you have to be honest and communicate. It might feel awkward, but sending a quick message is always better than disappearing without a word. Two is to always do your research as an applicant. It is important to do your own homework, research the company, ask the right questions during interviews, review the contract carefully before signing, and don't be afraid to negotiate if something doesn't sit right. I think a lot of career catfishing situations happen because people commit too quickly without fully understanding what they are getting into. And I think on the side of the employer is to be transparent and manage expectation. At the same time, employers also have a role to play. So being transparent about the role, expectations, and work culture would ultimately reduce career catfishing. I think employers should not also oversell the position just to get someone through the door. And if you promise something during the interview process, then it is important to follow through. That's how trust is built from both sides. And lastly, is to respect yourself and others. Respect the time and effort that goes into the hiring process. And if it's not the right fit, that is okay, but let people know. Professionalism isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up with integrity, even if it's uncomfortable. So that's for me. How about you, Maria?
Thank you. Great perspective. And I believe we covered quite a number of different perspective today. And at the beginning, I shared about the psychological drive that could have led to the career catfishing, right? Whether it's about feeling of like the anxiety, feeling that they don't have enough information, or perhaps having not enough information for them to make a better decision. All of these could contribute to the career catfishing. And so I want to give a different perspective. And this is for employers out there who are listening and following us on our podcast. What are some of the things that can be helpful to ensure that that you have lesser of this happening. And I want to end our podcast today with the acronym CARES. CARES, and ways to build a positive environment to prevent catfishing and support talent with empathy and structure. So let me start with C. C stands for connect personally. Now, interviews can be rather cold. And through the many rounds of interview, sometimes it is only at the much later state that you get to see a face, right? And not just like writing a lot of things. And perhaps one of the things we can do is to start building the emotional investment before day one. If you are planning, or if the person has a higher chance of like joining the team already, then start introducing to the team, say, get the manager to come and say hi. And remember, the goal for this is to build the relationship and don't focus on the transaction. So C, connect personally. A is affirm, fit early. So this is where it is important to clarify the team role, the culture, the expectations during the offer stage. And Jhea also mentioned, right, that you need to be very clear. Be very clear about like all these things. So sometimes as employers, it's also good to ask them questions such as, do you see yourself growing with us? And if there's any hesitation, then you can just talk and then have an open conversation and to continue, right? So that is A, affirm, fit early. R is remove friction and fear. And this is to address any of the feeling of overwhelm, feeling nervous about the job, and to make sure that the interview process is not a one-way, but a two-way where it is safe enough for employees or potential employees to ask any questions and for them to be honest during the conversation. And even if they want to back out, or if they hesitate, that's fine as well, because there shouldn't be a judgment. It is part of this dance, the navigating if, hey, are we a good fit? And the interview should be used for that. It's not just a one-way thing, but to see whether both parties can fit together or not. And so having the conversation, reduce down the frictions and the fear, and having that honest talk is helpful. Now, E is for engage before day one. And I think going back to me, right? Like, having that dreams, all of these nightmares, and going like, naked to like the school, or even like the workplace and all these things. I think one way to address that is to share onboarding previews, present them a welcome pack, or even give them a little bit of an insight of what to expect, because seeing something that is real is better than me building my own thoughts and imaginations in for myself, right? So it could be micro onboarding that can be helpful to reduce anxiety of entering a new place. And last but not least, S is start with support and not pressure. So make sure that there's a buddy assigned, or even a mentor for someone that is new, and help them to celebrate any of the small wins in the work that they do. So I think what my mentor also like to say is that we need to plan for success, help them, right? So that we need to make sure that whatever we planned, we need to plan for them to be successful rather than plan for them to fail. And so part of the structure, by assigning a mentor, buddy, or having small tasks first, is to ensure that they can feel that they are welcome, they are able to fit in, and they're able to learn and develop and grow together with you. So that is CARES. CARE, connect personally, affirm fits early, remove frictions and fear, engage before day one, and S is for start with support and not pressure. Over to you, Al.
Thanks so much, Maria. And I hope the listeners, I hope the audience I think this is episode 9. We now have 9
Has it
acronyms.
been 9?
We now have 9 acronyms that we've shared to the audience. And so I hope that this episode has been helpful for everyone, and that there was something along this episode that you found helpful, that you found insightful. And if you have any questions, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Is there something you wanted to say, Jaya?
I know, no.
For sharing your insights and stories today. That's it for today's coffee break. Thanks for hanging out with us in the break room. Don't forget to share this with your favorite work buddy, your friend, your colleague, your siblings, whoever. And if you've got thoughts, rants, or feels, slide into our DMs or comment down below. We're at iGrow Online on most platforms. And remember, your well being matters even between meetings. Catch you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.